Socialite Gray Godfrey wakes up from a night. You can tell that I've definitely my head is in 10 different places right now. So here's my caveat of why I'm rereading this one. So let me know, what book are you really looking excited to? And she is coming back to Camp Nightingale. So I believe. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse, and welcome to a bit of a book recommendation video. So I have been sitting in NetGalley Purgatory, waiting, hoping, praying that Ashley Winstead's new book, The Last Housewife, maybe will come my way before it comes out in August. But I am super impatient, and I read Fool Me Once and I just want more of it. So the inspiration behind this video is I just reread her Backlist book, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, which came out last year, while I bide my time waiting for her newest book to come out. And it got me to thinking about a bunch of authors that I love who have new books coming out this summer. And if you are also playing the waiting game like I am and are looking for something to read in the meantime to keep you entertained, I thought I would pull out some of my favorite books by some of my favorite authors to recommend to you guys. So June, July, and August are shaping up to be amazing months for new releases that are coming out. And I will be making individual videos about these books, but I've talked about a bunch of these already in my pre-orders video and probably sporadically mentioned them in other videos as well. But I wanted to gather together, like I said, some backlist books by these authors. So I am not one to shy away from doing a reread. So I actually have a book on here that I plan to reread. I've got a book that I want to get to, and then I pulled out some of my favorites by these authors. So these are in no particular order in terms of when their new books are coming out, but someone who has a new book coming out in August, which I'm so jazzed about, is Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have read all of her backlist, but one of my favorites is definitely After I Do. So this was the last of her backlist that I had left, which I was savoring last year before Malibu Rising came out, and I wound up reading it, obviously, and I loved it. So I feel like Taylor Jenkins Reid is one of those people where we hear so much understandable buzz about Evelyn Hugo and Daisy and Malibu Rising, but her backlist gets less attention, and I think it deserves all the attention in the world because I absolutely love all of her books. So this book is about Lauren and Ryan, and they are married, but their marriage has hit a bit of a hitch, and they have made this completely unconventional decision to take a year off from their marriage, to go their separate ways, to not communicate, to live their lives, and to figure out after that year if they are meant to be together or if they are meant to split for good. And this was one of those books where I was like, I'm not really sure how this is going to go. And I loved this so much more than I even could possibly imagine. So we obviously get Lauren and Ryan's love story. So we see the past and present with them, but then we follow Lauren on her journey of that year of trying to find out what her happily ever after is, sort of what lies ahead for her and the roads that she takes. But such a core of this story is about her relationship as much as it is with herself, with her mother, with her sister, with her best friend. This has such a solid group of strong, amazing women, and I just loved it so much. So it is a love story about her and Ryan, but I also feel like there is an element of a love story between her and all the women who are in her life. And I just absolutely loved it. So it says, it's what happens when the love fades. It's about staying in love, seizing love, forsaking love, and committing to love with everything you've got. And oh my gosh, I just loved it so much. And I feel like I don't hear enough people talk about this one at all. It made me cry. It was just like everything I needed at the time. This is the second of her books that she wrote, and I just loved it so much. So while I bide my time waiting for Carrie Soto to come out, I might do some more backlist rereading of hers, but if you have not gotten into her backlist, I highly recommend. This is a great place to start. The next author I want to talk about is Katherine Ryan Howard. So I just talked about 56 Days in my April wrap-up because I just read it, but the other book of hers that I have read, which I highly recommend, is The Nothing Man. So this is 2 stories, 1 killer, no mercy. This book is so smart in how it's written. And in this one, it is serial killer vibes, survivor vibes. This is loosely, totally inspired by the Golden State Killer, which Katherine Ryan Howard says. So in this book, we meet Eve, and her true crime memoir has just come out. And the opening page of it says, "I was the girl who survived the Nothing Man. Now I am the woman who is going to catch him." So nearly 2 decades ago, her family was murdered by the serial killer who haunted this area, and very much like the Golden State Killer. So multiple victims, multiple families, people were killed, and he was never caught. And in present day, like I said, Eve has written this true crime memoir, and she is determined to figure out who he was. And then we see a man named Jim. He is a security guard in a local supermarket, and he sees this book on the shelf, and he picks it up and he starts reading it, and he realizes that it's about him. So now he is determined to stop Eve, stop her investigation, and stop her from finding out who he is. So we see Eve's book, we see the present day with Jim. It's so original, it's so incredible. I was completely here for it. We get the book within the book trope, which I absolutely love. And I just love Katherine Ryan Howard's writing. So I was totally hooked. And it says she can't stop writing until she finds the killer, and he can't stop reading because the killer is him. So it reminds me to a degree, but totally not in the same vein, of 13 by Steve Kavanaugh, where it's like the serial killer isn't on trial, he's on the jury. So I love seeing it from the serial killer's perspective as he's reading her book, and as things that he did are being revealed to him through Eve's words. It's just so smart, it's so well done. If you're familiar with the Golden State Killer crime in the Michelle McNamara book, you will see sort of like different sort of winks and nods in this as well, but you don't have to be familiar with that crime to actually understand this book. Don't worry about it, but you will see a lot of like familiarity to it, which I very much enjoyed. But she is incredible. I also have Distress Signals, which she wrote, and then she has another book called Rewind. So if you've already read this one, fortunately she also has a really good backlist before Runtime comes out this summer. Next up, I have Jennifer Hillier. So her new book, Things We Do in the Dark, is coming out in July. I have the arc of it. I already read it. I absolutely loved it. But if you are looking to get into her backlist, I really feel like you could start anywhere, to be perfectly honest. But I wanted to talk about Wonderland because I feel like this is the one I hear, I don't even want to say like the least about, but yet I don't hear as much about it. I totally loved this book. I also, in listening to a podcast with her, found out. So I had realized that she links characters from one book to the next. A lot of things take place in the same universe. So she will refer to things, kind of Easter eggs, if you're familiar with her books and her universe. But one Easter egg, which isn't really an Easter egg, that I did not pick up on in her most recent book, Little Secrets, which came out in 2020, the private investigator in that book is actually the cop in this book, which I didn't realize because I read them so far apart. So now I'm like, ugh, I kind of want to go back to Wonderland and like revisit it. And then I 1000% plan to reread Little Secrets because it's been 2 whole years and clearly I need to read it again. So in Wonderland, we are following Vanessa Castro. And in this book, she is the deputy police chief of Seaside, Washington. And she has just moved her family to Seaside to sort of escape her own challenging past. And she just wants sort of a quiet life that she can live in Seaside, and of course that's not going to happen. So day one starts off with a bang. So this entire town revolves around Wonderland, and it is a magical place boasting a certain retro charm. So it is a major tourist attraction. It's where all the money for this town comes from. Everything and anything is done sort of in protection of Wonderland, to promote Wonderland, to make sure nothing harms Wonderland, because the entire town revolves around it and depends on it financially. So you know something's happening at Wonderland. So it says Vanessa's first day starts off with a bang. So Wonderland is sort of completely creepy. It's got a clown museum. It's a home to creepy wax replicas of movie stars and a massive collection of antique porcelain dolls. And it says, or maybe it's the terrifyingly real House of Horrors. Or maybe, just maybe, it's the dead, decaying body left in the midway for all the wonder workers to see. So we have an unidentifiable man, we have a missing teenager, and we just have a whole lot of drama that's about to ensue. What I loved about this book is I read Jar of Hearts first, which I still stand by as my favorite of her books. And this book reminds me of Jar of Hearts the most. It has messy characters, decisions are made, consequences to actions, super interesting characters, super complicated things going on here. Vanessa is a straight up badass. I absolutely love her. And I just was completely here for this book. I devoured it. I thought it was so smart. I thought it was so well written. The characters were so wonderful, the way they just punch off the page. And I just love all the twists and turns of this book. To me, this is such a hallmark of her writing. And she wrote this before she wrote Jar of Hearts. So this was her 4th book, then Jar of Hearts. And I feel like you can see the trajectory she was on. I love seeing an author sort of in their journey, and you get to see the ride that they're on, and you get to see how one book influences the next, and again, how they pull Easter eggs and influences and keep things in the same universe. I just absolutely love it. So you by no means need to read her books in any kind of order, but I just think it's absolutely great. And again, like I said, I haven't heard as many people talk about this one, and I think it's a miss that it's not being talked about more, so definitely pick this one up. The next book I want to talk about is from Ruth Ware, and this is her first book, In a Dark, Dark Wood. So she has a book called The It Girl who is coming out. That is coming out in June and July, I want to say. UK and US dates are different. And this is the first book of hers that I read, and I loved it so much. I haven't read it since the first time I read it, and this was before I used to put post-its in it of when I actually read the books. But this is still my most favorite of hers, and this is on my must reread list because I just thought this was so smart, so well done. I was totally hooked. And I think a big part of what appeals to me about this book is it is about a group of friends who knew each other in college. Things happened that they're not friends anymore, but they reunite for a bachelorette hen party and things go horribly wrong. But I love those stories that are about these past and present friendships that have these complications within it. There are secrets, there are lies, there are just so much baggage and so many things going on between the group. And I just absolutely love those kinds of stories. So in this book, we are following Leonora. So she's known as Lee to some, Nora to others, but she wakes up in a hospital and it says with the knowledge that someone is dead. And she's not wondering what happened, but she's wondering, what have I done? So we go backwards in time to build up for the entire weekend. We see what happened, and I just loved it so much. This one was dog-eared to the high heavens, and I feel like this one doesn't get enough airtime either, which is why I'm trying to talk about it here. But I think it's such a great introduction to Ruth Ware as a writer. It is definitely dark. It is showing the darkness that exists within these female friendships, and how, you know, sometimes you move on from people, sometimes you're drawn back to them, and just sort of the dark, delicious, messed up things that people will do. I just loved it so much. Such a great book. A book that is definitely on my reread list for the sooner rather than later side is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. So The House Across the Lake comes out in June. I have already read it because I was lucky to get a copy on NetGalley and I loved it. So I am working on a Riley Sager author spotlight. So I have read all of his books. I read them in order, but this book to me stands out as the one I feel like I know the least. So I discovered who Riley Sager was at my first Thriller Fest. And Final Girls was already published. It was out in paperback, and it was right before Last Time I Lied came out. And he was on a panel with Jennifer Hillier and some other people, and this is how I figured out who Jennifer Hillier was. And at this stage of the game, I thought I was pretty savvy with my writers, and I knew who was who, and I felt like I was reading a good array of people. And I was watching this panel with them, and I was like, how do I not know who these people are? And how do I not have these books that they wrote, because they all sound totally amazing? So you guys know, I read Final Girls, I absolutely loved it. It was just my favorite. And then I read this not long afterwards, and I feel like I was so drunk on Final Girls and how much I loved it that anything I read after that would feel like a letdown. So to me, this just wasn't as good, and my feelings started and ended there. I very much like the story. We get past and present timelines. We are at a summer camp. We have 4 girls who lived in a cabin together. 3 of them went out one night and never came back again. So we are following our main character, Emma Davis. So she was the 4th girl in the cabin, and she is coming back to Camp Nightingale, which closed after that summer all those years ago when her bunkmates all disappeared. And Emma is trying to piece together what happened that summer. So it's like that great, you know, twist on summer camp vibes. Like I said, kind of those horror-y type of movies. His inspiration was The Picnic at Hanging Rock, which I was not at all familiar with. And I need to go back and reread this book because I really feel like I did not give it the justice it deserved. And I feel like I went into it feeling like it's not going to be as good as Final Girls. And as much as I really enjoyed it, I really feel like I said, it's the one I know the least about. So I'm very excited to go back into it. When I read it, I actually got it right from my library. So I didn't have my own edition of it. What was I thinking? So I've since picked this one up. So I need to go through and meaningfully mark it up give it the love it deserves, and then I will give you guys my all-in Riley Sager Spotlight Author video. If you guys saw part 2 of my April wrap-up, then you know that I read The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. So The Family Remains is coming out this summer. So you absolutely have to read this one first because it is the second in the series. So it appears, I will tell you nothing, don't worry about it, but it appears we will get some of the same characters we already know, and then we're gonna get some new characters as well. But this is multiple points of view, multiple timelines, and we are following a woman named Libby, and on her 25th birthday, she gets a letter from a solicitor and finds out that she has inherited this house in London. So when she was just 10 months old, the police came to this house in London and found her newborn baby alone in a crib, crying but healthy. There were 3 adults dressed in black, dead on the kitchen floor, and there were 4 other children who were believed to have lived in this house that have completely disappeared and vanished into thin air. So Libby has never known her backstory. She's never known where she came from. She never knew what happened in that house to her family. So we see, like I said, past and present timelines. We find out what happened. We get these multiple characters, how they all come together. It's typical Lisa Jewell. It is smart. It's well done. It's very character driven. There is a mystery to it. I could not apparently make up my mind because I both tabbed and dog-eared this book. I don't know what I was doing in this one, but I absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to see what happens next because, again, there are things that happen in this book that we will see some of the characters continue on, and I'm really excited for the new ones who come in, and I'm very curious to see what she does because I have some very strong feelings about some of these characters, and I really hope that I don't want to say anything else, but I'm very excited for it. So if you have any intention of picking up The Family Remains, you have to read this one first, like you just do. The next book I have is from Megan Golden, and this is The Night Swim. So this is her second book, and this one also has all the things I love in a book. This has true crime podcast vibes in it, which I just love. We've got a mystery in the past, we've got a mystery in the present, and it's spectacular because obviously I love that as well. Who doesn't love a spectacular book, right? So in this book, we are following Rachel, who is the true crime podcast host, and she arrives in this small town to cover this controversial case while it is happening and as it's unfolding. So small town, lots of secrets, and the town is being torn apart because of this trial. And we have this golden boy destined for Olympic greatness who has been accused of raping the beloved granddaughter of the police chief. And the town is very much divided. So definitely has some Beartown vibes to it. And while Rachel is there, she gets a note on her car windshield begging her for help about a missing persons case from many years ago. So we follow Rachel as she is investigating both of these cases. I physically read the book. I heard the audiobook is great because, again, there is a podcast element to it, which I think is just really well done from an audio level. And I thought this was such a great book. I read her first book, The Escape Room, which I also completely loved. And she's just such a great writer. She did not have a book come out last year, but she does have a new one coming out this year, which I cannot wait to read. And I just think it's so great. So I really think this is a well done book. It's a really smart mystery. It's definitely hard hitting. It has some very obvious inspiration from the Chanel Miller Brock Turner case. And I think it definitely has, it definitely has some difficult content in it. So consider the trial to be an obvious trigger warning and content warning. You do get some graphic descriptions during the trial of what happened. So there definitely are some hard to read elements to it, but if it is of interest to you, I just highly recommend it. I think it's so well done. And like I said, I think she's such a great writer and I really can't wait to read her new book. But until then, you can check out this one or The Escape Room. The next book I have is The Last Flight by Julie Clark, and I totally devoured this book as well. So this one is 2 women, 2 flights, 1 last chance to disappear. So we have Claire and we have Eva, and they are both trying to escape their lives for different reasons, and they wind up meeting at an airport, and they make the decision to switch tickets and take each other's flights, and one of the planes winds up going down. So we follow one of the women leading up to the moment where she winds up making the choice to switch tickets, and then we follow the other woman after she lands in the other city with the identity of the other woman, and is now living her life and figuring out that there was a reason she was running. So I thought this was so smart, so well done. It totally had me guessing until the end. I had some theories. I loved how it all tied together. I thought there were just really smart characters in this, and I really enjoyed this book. So I devoured this one very quickly. I read this back in 2020 when it came out, and I'm just really intrigued to see what she's going to come up with next. So if you missed this was a debut novel. Get it now, because now's your chance to get caught up. Her new book is not a sequel to this one in any way. I just mean get caught up with the author. But this is definitely one of those like can binge it in a weekend kind of reads, and just so incredibly well done. And then the last book I want to talk about is PJ Vernon's When You Find Me. So he is not going to have a new book coming out until 2023, which is such a bummer, but Panorama is still messing up a whole lot of things in the world of publishing. So I was listening to a podcast with him. So I read Bathhouse, which is his book that came out last year, which was super explosive. I feel like it was everywhere, well-deserved. It's such a great book. It's so twisty. That's another one you can binge in a weekend. And his new book is written, I heard a bit about it. It's got a Rear Window vibe to it all, but 2023 is a long ways away. I feel like it'll, you know, we're gonna blink and it'll be here. But in the meantime, this is his first book, which I picked up after Bathhouse because I wanted to read more from him. So in this one, it says her husband is missing. Visiting her family's South Carolina estate, socialite Gray Godfrey wakes up from a night out to an empty bed. Her husband Paul is gone, and a thrashing hangover has wiped her memory clean. Ah. At first, she's relieved for the break from her tumultuous marriage. Perhaps Paul just needed some space. Girl. But when his car is found abandoned on the highway, Gray must face the truth. Paul is gone, and Gray may not want him found. So her life is unraveling. So it says a chilling look at marriage, madness, and the lives we think we lead. So this was his debut novel. Super excited for this. Like I said, Bathhouse was so incredible, but if like me, you binged that one already and you need something else to help tide you over, I'm recommending this one. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to, and I'm super excited for it. So there's a handful of some backlist books that I think are definitely worth checking out while we all bide our time waiting for new releases from our favorite authors to come out. So let me know what book you are most excited about coming out. What book that's coming out are you most excited about? And what book by that author would you read in the meantime? Always looking for more suggestions for books. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today and for being here and spending some of your time with me. I totally appreciate it. And I will see you guys in another video very soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.